So I want you to imagine, just for a second, that you were walking through this incredibly prestigious museum of ancient history.
Okay, I am picturing it.
Right, so you're strolling past the Rosetta Stone. You are taking in these towering, meticulously preserved marble statues of Roman emperors. You've got ancient bronze swords encased in that temperature-controlled glass.
Oh yeah, the really dramatic lighting.
Exactly. You are fully immersed in antiquity, completely surrounded by the weight of human achievement. And then, sitting right there on a velvet pedestal, perfectly illuminated by a halogen spotlight, is a brightly colored, mass-produced plastic whoopee cushion.
Well, I mean, that creates an immediate cognitive dissonance, right?
Yeah.
Your brain would just scramble to reconcile the environment with the object.
Yeah.
You'd probably assume it has to be some sort of prank or, I don't know, a mistake by the installation team.
Oh, you would absolutely look around for hidden cameras. But what if the museum curator walked up, completely deadpan, and explained that this specific piece of plastic was actually a foundational artifact of modern civilization?
Wait, really?
Yeah, like that it was secretly connected to ancient monarchs, deep philosophical debates, and the literal evolution of human language. Suddenly, you are forced to reevaluate something you have taken for granted your entire life.
Right, it shifts instantly from being disposable trash to being a vital key for understanding cultural history.
Exactly. And that is exactly what happens when you look at the origins of the most universally groan-inducing, eye-rolling joke in the English language. I'm talking about, of course, why did the chicken cross the road?
It's so funny because we treat that specific string of words as a playground staple. It is so ubiquitous, so ingrained in us from childhood, that we barely even process it as a joke anymore.
No, not at all.
It operates more like a sequence of syllables we simply accept as part of the background noise of growing up.
Yeah.
But when you pull back the layers, for this deep dive, you find a surprisingly rich, bizarre history.
It really is bizarre.
Yeah, and it connects to highbrow 19th century literary magazines, the literal invention of anti-humor, and even a surprisingly dark existential modern theory.
So to understand how a poultry bird crossing the pavement became a cultural monolith, we really have to start with the concept of the stock joke. Our language is just built on these pre-packaged linguistic structures.
Yes, they function almost like Pavlovian triggers.
Right. If I walk up to you and say, a man walks into a bar, I have essentially rung a bell. I don't need to explain that we are doing a bit.
Your brain immediately switches tracks. You know you aren't about to hear a genuine anecdote about my weekend.
Exactly. You are primed for a punchline.
And the neurological efficiency of that is actually fascinating. Stock setups reduce cognitive load. They are linguistic architecture. They provide a recognizable framework so the listener doesn't have to spend energy figuring out the rules of engagement.
They already know the rhythm.
Right, they already know the rhythm. And these structures have traceable histories. I mean, they had to be popularized by someone before they became permanent fixtures in our cultural schema.
Which brings us to a historical footnote that completely reframes a classic setup. The unwitting godfather of the knock-knock joke structure is actually William Shakespeare.
Which is wild.
It is. And it wasn't birthed in one of his sweeping comedies either. It was forged in the middle of a dark, bloody tragedy.
Right, we have to look at Macbeth for this.
Yeah.
Specifically Act 2, Scene 3.
Okay, set the scene for us.
So the scene opens late at night at Macbeth's castle, right after a horrific murder has just taken place. There is an incredibly loud, imposing knocking at the castle gate.
Just really building the tension.
Exactly. And the porter, who is heavily intoxicated, stumbles around in the dark trying to answer it. As he grumbles to himself about who could possibly be arriving at this ungodly hour, he mutters the exact cadence out loud. He literally says, "Knock, knock, and who's there?"
He repeats it multiple times to himself, right?
He does.
So he's literally doing the bit, knock, knock, who's there? Just muttered by a drunk gatekeeper surrounded by tragedy. But the irony here, and I love this, is that Shakespeare didn't actually follow this up with a punchline.
No, he didn't.
The porter doesn't finish the thought with a pun. It's essentially an orphaned setup. It's like a famous architect building this massive, incredibly ornate, beautifully carved doorway that just opens into a blank brick wall right in the middle of the room.
That is a perfect analogy.
Right, like he built the structure, but totally forgot to attach the room.
And that is the perfect mechanism to describe what happened linguistically here. Shakespeare built the architecture, but he left it empty. However, the sheer repetition of those four words in a play as massively popular and enduring as Macbeth, well, it established the cadence.
Yeah.
He mimicked the actual physical rhythm of knocking on wood and embedded it into the audience's auditory memory.
Which created a cultural vacuum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And human nature absolutely abhors an unfinished pattern. So over the next few centuries, the public took that incredibly recognizable structural rhythm and started plugging their own silly wordplay into it to finish the sequence.
That is amazing. So Shakespeare accidentally built the ultimate comedic launchpad by leaving a pattern unfinished. But if the knock-knock joke traces its structural roots back to a 17th century castle gate, we have to figure out where the wandering poultry bird originated, because it wasn't Shakespeare.
No, definitely not Shakespeare.
Right. To find the earliest known printed record of the chicken joke, we have to jump forward to 1847 across the Atlantic into the pages of a high-profile New York periodical called The Knickerbocker.
And we really should contextualize what the Knickerbocker was during this era. This was a significant literary magazine. It was heavily associated with writers like Washington Irving.
So it's not a joke book.
Definitely not a cheap dime store joke book. It catered to an educated, highbrow readership. The chicken joke was actually included in a specific section of the magazine dedicated to discussing conundrums, but more specifically, a phenomenon known as quips and quillets.
Quips and quillets. I mean, we don't use that phrase anymore, but it essentially describes a form of hyperpedantic verbal fencing.
Oh, absolutely.
It's basically the 19th century equivalent of being an internet troll in a comment section.
That is exactly what it is.
You set up a premise that appears to be a deep intellectual puzzle, but the resolution relies entirely on a frustrating technicality. You force the listener to strain their brain looking for a complex answer, only to hit them with a literalism just to watch them groan.
Right. It was an intellectual flex. The magazine defined these as quibbling, nitpicking verbal distinctions. You were weaponizing the audience's expectation of how language and logic puzzles are supposed to operate.
Yeah.
Because in the 1840s, parlor games and intricate riddles were incredibly popular among the upper classes. They loved complex wordplay. So a quillet was a deliberate subversion of that upper-class parlor game format.
Okay, let's look at the exact phrasing from that 1847 publication, because there is a slight, fascinating deviation from the modern version. The Knickerbocker asks, why does a chicken cross the street?
The street.
Yeah, street. And the answer provided is, because it wants to get on the other side.
Which is wild because the core mechanic is entirely intact. It has survived nearly 2 centuries of linguistic drift, almost completely untouched, save for swapping the word street for road.
But logically, for a joke to be published in a major literary magazine in 1847 as a prime example of a quillet, it had to exist in the cultural ether beforehand.
Right. A magazine analyzing a trend implies the trend is already happening out in the real world.
Exactly. So someone had to be delivering this joke out loud. And the text points us toward the stage, specifically to a 19th century blackface troupe known as Christie's Minstrels, who were performing widely in the 1840s.
Now, historically, we cannot definitively claim authorship here. There is no ironclad textual evidence proving whether Christie's Minstrels invented the joke from scratch or if they simply absorbed it from tavern culture and popularized it through their extensive touring.
That makes sense.
However, what is undeniable is their role in cementing it into the public consciousness. To understand why it worked on stage, we have to look at their specific performance style. They were highly famous for rapid-fire humor. Their acts were dense with complex wordplay conundrums, double entendres, and really intricate riddles.
Which, to me, creates a massive contradiction. I mean, if you are a troupe renowned for complex linguistic acrobatics, why did the chicken cross the road is literally the laziest piece of writing imaginable.
It seems like it. Yeah.
It feels entirely out of place in a rapid-fire wordplay set, delivering the most boring, painfully literal punchline ever conceived. Seems like career sabotage for a comedian known for wit.
But the contradiction is the engine of the joke. That sensation of disappointment, that realization of, wait, that's not a real punchline, is the intended psychological effect.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. What we were analyzing here is a pioneering, highly successful example of anti-humor. It operates on incongruity theory.
So anti-humor isn't just about being unfunny, it's an active manipulation of the listener's prediction engine.
Precisely. Let's look at the cognitive mechanics of the audience watching Christie's Minstrels or the highbrow readership of the Knickerbocker. They've been conditioned. They are listening to or reading highly intricate, pun-filled riddles. Their brains are actively scanning for the double meaning, the hidden linguistic trapdoor.
Right. They're ready for a puzzle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when the performer asks, why did the chicken cross the road? The audience leans in. They are dedicating cognitive resources to solving the puzzle. They are expecting a reward. And then the performer delivers a brutal, mundane literalism to get to the other side.
Yeah.
The tension is resolved not with a clever twist, but by refusing to play the game at all.
It is like going to see a world-famous escape artist, right?
Okay, like this.
You are in the theater, the dramatic music is swelling, the magician brings out this massive, heavy steel vault. They wrap the vault in thick iron chains, they snap these heavy, menacing padlocks onto the chains.
Really building the suspense.
Exactly. As an audience member, you are on the edge of your seat. Your brain is trying to calculate how they could possibly escape this contraption. And then the magician casually reaches into their pocket, pulls out a tiny silver key, unlocks the padlocks, opens the vault door, and walks off the stage.
Yes.
The entertainment doesn't come from a trick being performed. It comes from the audacious refusal to do the trick.
And the audience laughs because they recognize they have been outmaneuvered. They were searching for a complex solution, and the performer simply walked through the front door.
So true.
It is pure metacomedy. It relies entirely on the listener having a pre-existing schema of how jokes are constructed, and then the performer deliberately violating that contract. The subversion of the brain's dopamine reward system creates a sudden tension release, which manifests physically as laughter or a groan.
A groan is definitely more common with this one.
Very true.
But for almost 200 years, we have comfortably categorized this as the ultimate anti-joke, like a masterclass in dry, mundane anti-humor. But what if the joke has survived this long because we've all been completely blind to a much darker, incredibly clever double meaning that was hiding in plain sight the entire time?
This is where the evolution of the chicken joke takes a fascinating turn into the modern digital era. It really forces us to look at how oral traditions and folklore evolve over time.
Because recently, this nearly 200-year-old quip experienced a massive resurgence. It went absolutely viral across social media platforms.
And not for the reasons you think.
No, it didn't go viral because people suddenly found the anti-humor hilarious again. It went viral because millions of users began collectively reinterpreting the punchline to get to the other side.
Right, when we study how language and texts survive, we often talk about the death of the author. It doesn't necessarily matter what the original creator intended. What matters is how the current culture engages with the artifact. The internet crowdsourced a new meaning by questioning the literalism. The collective realization was profound. Well, what if the other side does not denote the opposite physical pavement of the street? What if the other side is spiritual?
Which completely changes the physics of the narrative. If the other side represents the afterlife, the great beyond, well, then the chicken did not successfully navigate the crossing.
No. It implies a fatal intersection with oncoming traffic.
Oh my gosh. It turns the chicken into a tragic figure. It implies the chicken intentionally stepped out into the road to sacrifice itself, purposefully seeking the heavenly other side.
Yeah.
It is incredibly poignant, existentially bleak, and just incredibly dark.
Very dark.
But linguistically, it performs a magic trick. It flips the joke from being a dry 19th century anti-joke right back into a dark, subversive pun.
It retroactively installs the exact kind of clever wordplay that the 1847 audience was scanning for in the first place.
Wow.
It fulfills the original contract of a riddle just 2 centuries late.
It actually satisfies the puzzle, but, I mean, realistically, we have to examine the historical likelihood of this. Did a stage performer in the 1840s actually sit down and construct a morbid, multi-layered metaphor about poultry suicide? Or is the modern internet simply projecting existential dread onto a flat piece of text?
Well, the consensus is that it is highly probable we are projecting.
I figured.
Yeah. The 19th century context of quips and quillets strongly supports the idea that the joke was designed purely as a literal anti-joke. The spiritual reading is almost certainly a modern imposition. But from a sociological standpoint, whether or not the morbid double meaning was the original intent is entirely irrelevant.
Because the projection itself is the phenomenon.
Exactly the point.
Yeah.
It demonstrates that a joke published during the era of horse-drawn carriages is not a stagnant, dead artifact.
It's alive.
Right. The fact that a global digital community is actively debating its mechanics, deconstructing its phrasing, and going viral by reinterpreting its punchline proves that even the oldest, most fatigued one-liners maintain cultural elasticity.
That is so interesting.
We are still engaging with the text. We are still utilizing it as a canvas to reflect our current cultural sensibilities, which, at the moment, happen to be steeped in dark existential irony.
It really is a living, breathing document The text survives because we keep finding new utility for it. Which brings us all the way back to you listening to this deep dive right now.
Yeah.
We interact with history in incredibly mundane ways every single day. The next time you are sitting in a living room and a child or a nephew or a little cousin runs up to you to deliver a terrible knock-knock joke, or they inevitably ask you why a chicken crossed the road,
It will happen.
it definitely will. I want you to remember the architecture behind those words. You aren't just enduring a bad punchline. You are actively participating in a centuries-old oral tradition,
It's true.
a continuum of comedy that bridges the tragic, blood-soaked stages of William Shakespeare, the highbrow, pedantic literary debates of 19th century New York, and the existential, crowdsourced philosophy of the modern internet.
It really highlights the invisible weight of everyday language. And it leaves us with a necessary final provocation to consider.
I love these.
If the absolute most mundane, repetitive, universally eye-rolling joke in human history secretly conceals layers of cognitive psychology, literary history, meta-comedy, and a dark, retrofitted double meaning about the afterlife, well, what other simple, everyday playground phrases or casual idioms are you utilizing right now without even realizing you are quoting a centuries-old puzzle?
You might be walking around with a museum artifact in your pocket right now, completely convinced it's just a plastic whoopee cushion. Keep questioning the everyday structures around you, keep looking for that hidden architecture, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.